1 year, right? And I'm sure that this journey is going to give a lot of insights to the students who are going to write the CLAT next year and the ones in 2023 as well. Okay, so let's start. We'll put this session into four brackets. So the first one, let's start with how did this journey start? So very quickly, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I want each one of you to tell me how did law happen for all of you? If you could just give a quick insight into what made you enter this field. Can we start with the ladies first? So Samriddhi, can we start with you?
Yeah. So honestly, in ninth grade only, like, as Indian parents do, they were like, oh, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? So I started thinking about it, and I figured that a normal job was like too boring. I don't want to do that. And I mean, fighting seemed fun, so I was like, yeah, I'll go for law. And my dad is really interested in it. He actually just completed his LLB this year. Like, he went to college and stuff like this year. Yeah. So inspiration. So that's how I got into it.
Oh, wonderful. Anushka?
So there wasn't a set process. I think in the beginning of 7th, 8th grade, you started realizing that this is something you may want to do in life. And I obviously started researching and I decided, yes, law was the right thing. So it wasn't any specific point.
Okay. Nia?
Like Anushka said, I kind of I was very interested in Indian politics and just, a lot of stuff like that in general. So I was looking at a few career options in 9th grade when you have a choice between science, commerce, what do you want to do in life? So I kind of made a decision at that point that, law appeals to me. It's something that I can see myself do for my life. So yeah, it was just that. And I just went along with my gut and I chose to do law.
Okay, Ananya, I'm sure for you the story is slightly different, right?
No, I mean, not that different. After 11th, my options narrowed down pretty quickly, and law and management were both the programs looked pretty appealing. So I decided to appear for both the exams. And I knew that both these things would be something that I would enjoy doing.
Okay. Vedika?
Right. So since a long time, I've always been keen to a keen orator. I like debating. So in 9th grade, I found out that, law fits my skill set, wherein you require all these skills. And I researched more about it. My parents also advised me. So that's how I decided to do law.
Okay, wonderful. Pranav?
So quite interesting story actually. So when I was in 7th and 8th, I used to go to JEE preparations. I used to go to what was it, PACE and Rao IIT, and really
both at the same time.
Yeah, in 8th and 9th, I think. Yeah, very 2 years. I had a very bad experience over there. And post that, I decided, what's more towards my liking, and I loved MUNs. I loved debates, giving speeches, etc. And law was the only likely option, and which I thought suited me the best. So yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So one thing that comes out is for quite a few of you, the law started pretty early. It wasn't really a very late decision, right? Because the seeds were there in somewhere around 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th maybe. And then you took the plunge in 11th. Okay, let's get into the actual academics now, right? So how many of you remember your first mock scores?
I do.
In the new pattern, yes.
The new pattern.
I don't remember the new pattern.
Because if you say out of 200, it might be a little shocking for a lot of people right now. So the new pattern out of 150. If Nia, you could go ahead with it.
I think out of 150, my first mock score was a 91. I started off in the early 90s.
And when was this? 91? This was in 11th.
Yeah, the first mock that came out, which was the new pattern mock. Yeah, that one.
And what was your lowest?
My lowest has been, I think, an 88 or an 87 or an 80.
Okay. And the highest?
My highest has been a 121.
Okay. So fair enough. So 90 to 120 is the range you are always in. Okay. Anyone else? Anushka?
So I think the first mock in the new pattern I gave, I started off at 95, 94, 95. And that's also the lowest I've been at. I haven't gone below that. And my highest has been a 126.
Okay. Pranav, if
So I won't remember my first one, but my lowest was clearly, I think, 52, 53. That was my lowest score in the new pattern.
you made a lot of people happy, Pranav.
Yeah,
I am absolutely certain a lot of people seeing this are, Anushka and Nia have, they probably, when they heard the scores 85, you like are a godsend for them. So 52, right?
yeah, that was my lowest one.
Okay.
And the highest around it went to, I think, 118, 116 was the highest.
Okay. And Vedika?
Yeah, so I don't really remember my 11 scores. My 12th standard, that's when I started focusing on the new pattern. So my first mock score was around 66, and that was the lowest. My highest was around 115.
115. Okay. So that's quite a journey, right? Yeah, Ananya.
My first score was 102, and then lowest was probably about 91 or 92, and highest was 127.
Okay, and Samriddhi?
I don't remember my highest, but my lowest was like low 50s, same as Pranav.
Again in the 50s, huh?
Yeah. Like, and that was not one time, like multiple times, like low 50s earlier on,
Okay.
that's where I was.
So
Yeah.
I would want, I'll take some time from, the 50s guys, right? The 50s and the 60s guys. So that's Samriddhi and Pranav and Vedika, if I can consider you there, because 65, 66, because the other three started at a pretty decent level. What would be your advice to the guys who are currently in standard 11th or 12th and scoring in the 50s or the 60s? Because this is the time they will start writing the mocks. The first mock, they'll start taking it seriously around August, September. And a lot of them are going to get a shock of their life, right? A lot of them are going to hit those 50s and 60s. What would be your one advice to them?
I would say like something that was really big for me that I never did, like I started very late, was analyzing my mocks. Like for some reason, never occurred to me that I should be doing that. So you should always analyze your mocks. Like always, that's the most important thing I would say for me, because if you there's no point of giving a mock if you're not analyzing it. So I would say that's very important.
Perfect. Pranav?
So I think I agree with her on this. That's a very important part to analyze every mock which you give. And second thing is to be consistent. That's the most important thing ever. So my goal was whatever mocks I give, I need to perform better in every mock I give. So it was I get 51. I need to go to 55, 60, 70, 80. So keep getting better in every mock you give and have that pattern, follow the particular pattern and just be consistent. That's the key. So yeah.
Okay. Vedika?
I would say one of the major problems that I faced was I didn't know how to solve certain sections. Suppose legal. I knew the content and I would know the answers, but when you're giving a mock, there's a certain way you should answer those questions. So I think that was a major improvement. Another thing was GK. To consistently do GK, it won't happen overnight. Cannot mug up a lot of facts overnight. Should keep doing it and keep getting better at it. That would be my advice.
Okay. See, one of the things that students always come out with, one of the big problems that students have is they say that, look, when I take the topic test, the section test, I do phenomenally well, right? I get almost a 90% accuracy, but somehow everything seems to fall apart when I take the mock, right? I cannot replicate that success. How many of you face that problem? That the topic and the section test were all fine, but when it came to writing a mock, it was not all coming together. It is just falling apart completely. So again, I guess it would be, yeah.
I think the pressure level is obviously very different. When you're writing a mock, to sit for 2 hours and to actually pay full attention for 2 hours is a way bigger deal than the however long the topic tests and all are. So that could definitely be throwing you off. So you just have to practice more mocks and get better. That's the only way.
Okay. Anyone else on this?
So I think problem could be time management because it's a small mock and you put in sections together and it can be a bit difficult, a bit challenging. So the thing is to do the section and topic test, keep working on those, keep improving your scores in those, and do it in a timed manner. Just don't do the sectional test, do it in a timed manner, and then work on your time in every section. So keep reducing your time in every section, and then when the entire thing adds up, you may have a better chance of scoring higher in lesser time. So
Okay.
that's
I'd just like to add here. Another problem I think most of us faced was keeping the scores consistent. Sometimes I would do well in legal, but in the same mock, my English score would go down. In another mock, I would do well in logic, but then my legal score would go down. So you need to keep practicing all the sections together, and then will you improve your overall score?
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think just to add to what, go on. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so if that happened to me, you feel like, okay, you have one strong section and you're doing well in legal in 3 mocks together. And then in the next mock, and maybe you're not doing well in English in the first 3 mocks. The next mock, your English score has skyrocketed and your legal score has slumped. And then you're like, oh my God, I thought I was good at this and now I'm not. So it's it gets a little demotivating. So what I'd like to say is don't let it affect you. A lot is also based on the difficulty level of the mock, how you're maybe managing time in the mock. So yeah, that happens a lot where, your sections, the consistency comes after a point where all your scores will kind of plateau, and then you will know what section you need to work on for it to go up again.
No, but like Nia said, at some point your scores will plateau, but even once they plateau, there will be sudden drops. So I remember English was always my strong suit and I used to score pretty well. And then there used to be mocks where my English would just fall, and it would fall very badly. And something else would go up, usually my legal, because there was a point where I was scoring very low in legal. And what I realized was because I was practicing legal a lot, legal started going up. But then that was also taking a lot of the time away from English. So I think giving not just sectional tests, but mocks as a whole very consistently is what helps.
Just like what Samriti said, ultimately, after it plateaus and after your scores drop, you're going to practice a certain subject more than the other sections, and it's going to increase your score, and the others will fall because, when you're even giving that section during the mock, you will pay more attention and take that time away from the other section. So all this gets solved with more the mocks you give, all this will you'll figure it out by yourself.
Okay. So let's come to one more aspect of your preparation. Let me put this entire prep, because I think most of you are in the 2-year course, right? So let me look at it in terms of 3 phases. One is your standard 11th. The other is the time from which your standard 12 started till about December. Or let me make it 4 phases, right? And then the Jan to March phase, by when you probably realize that the exams would be not happening. So what you say then may not be valid for next year, because hopefully next year the exam should happen on time. And then what happened in the last 60 days before the exam? So if you could just put in the hours, the number of hours you guys put in, I'm sure standard 11th was not, in hindsight, is never up to the expected number of hours. And we always look at it as a honeymoon period. And then 12th is when obviously we pull up our socks. So how much time did you put in 11th? How much in 12th? And how much before the exam? If you could start, anyone can take it up, but.
In 11th.
Yeah, yeah, Ananya, tell me.
So in 11th, I did next to nothing really. But in 12th, from July 2020, I put in about 8 hours every day. Then from January, I did 10 hours.
8 hours a day, every day from July 2020?
Yeah, so from July, August, around that time. From January, I tried to do 10 hours every day, and the last 2 months was 11 hours something.
So Ananya, this is quite strange, because I think it's a one-off. I'm sure it's a one-off, right? Is there anyone who has given 8 hours in July till? So Ananya, what did you do? 8 hours would include your IPM as well?
Yeah, and my board prep and CLAT prep, all of that.
Oh, all of that. So look, no, I'm talking about a CLAT prep. I'm talking specifically about a CLAT prep. So how much time did you give for your CLAT prep?
Maybe 4 or 5 hours
every day. So half that time went into the CLAT preparation, right? And what about the time before the exams? Maybe the couple of months before the exams.
That would be 10 to 12 hours.
10 to 12 hours. Wow. Okay, and this is coming from someone who scored what, 91 in your first mock, 95,
102.
102 in the first mock. Okay, great. Yeah, Vedika, you wanted to say something.
So initially in the 11th, I did next to nothing. I just used to attend classes and solve mocks.
And there weren't too many mocks in 11th, right? Hardly about 15 or so.
Yeah, they were not too much. Then in the beginning of 12th, I gave around 2 hours, 3 hours. October, at least September onwards, I increased it to around 4 to 5 hours. And this continued till December. Then Jan onwards, I also realized that I have to do my board preparation. So that CLAT preparation was done side by side. And I think that would be around 6 to 7 hours for CLAT prep and the rest for board prep. In the last 2 to 3 months, I used to give around 10 to 12 months, including the time
so
for.
Guys, this is one thing I want all the audience to understand here, that even when Vedika decided to give time for the boards, a majority of the time still went for CLAT. Right? So the boards were important, but you made sure that CLAT remained number one in the priority list, right? Okay, Pranav?
So again, for me, 11th was nothing. So I'm at college in 11th, everything was offline. So I was really busy, in my college events, internships, fest. So I had hardly no time to study at all for CLAT or for my college exams for that matter. So I was really busy in 11th. But when 12th, with COVID and everything, we were at home. So then I started preparing more seriously. And the first few months of 12th were again not towards CLAT. I think December was the month I put my serious prep towards CLAT. And from December onwards till I would say June, July, I put in around 10 to 11 hours every day. And last 2 months I went to around 12 hours every day for only for CLAT, not for boards or any other exam, only CLAT. So
yeah. Okay, Nia?
Like everyone else, in 11th grade, I only gave mocks, attended my Sunday class. And maybe sometimes if I was just really bored, I'd take out one of those MCQ books and just randomly solve one paragraph and then put it back again. So in 11th, next to nothing. When I think lockdown started in June, around I started studying properly for CLAT in June. With I think I started off with 3-4 hours a day, and I maintained that till November. And then November onwards, maybe it was maybe an hour or two more because I added more GK for me to do. Like I started doing more GK, revising a little bit of GK here and there. And then the last 2 months, I put in 10 to 12 hours. Not 2 months, but 1.5 months for sure. I used to put in 10 to 12 only. And as far as my boards are concerned, I have barely put in any time for my boards. After April, after I think in May we knew that my boards were not going to happen. So from May to July, it was only CLAT for 10, 12 hours. And even when I knew that boards, like when we thought that boards were going to happen, I think I gave my boards only 1 or 2 hours top.
Okay. Anushka?
So I didn't put in the number of hours everyone here did. I took it very gradually. So even in 11th grade, I attended classes, I did mocks, but also I used to get really bored a lot of the time. So all of those books that CL gave us, I ended up solving a lot of those MCQs in 11th itself. Which is why when 12th started, I didn't have a lot of other subjects to do. I just had to do GK. So till like November, I think I was putting an hour or two a day, and that also not every day. I wasn't very consistent. From November, once GK started picking up pace, I think I was putting about 3 to 4 hours a day. Last 3-4 months, I think it went to 6-7 hours a day, but never crossed that. Maybe 8 once in a while. Never crossed that.
Okay, wonderful. Samriddhi?
Yeah, so same in 11th, I did absolutely nothing. And I am in, I went to college instead of ISC or whatever. So I just did nothing the entire time. Then lockdown started, I also did nothing. In September, it hit me that why I should maybe study. So in September, I would study like 2 hours, if that, sometimes. And then by Jan, I was up to like 4 hours. And after that, after a point, like the last 45 days, I didn't like, it wasn't like I'll only study these many hours, or like I wasn't going by that. I used to set a target for myself every day that I have to do this much every day. And if that took 2 hours, then that's fine. And if it took 10 hours, then that's also fine. So that's how I did it.
I'd like to add on to what Samriddhi said. For me
Sure.
too, in the last 2 months, honestly, more than how many hours you're studying is how much you're finishing in the hours that you're studying. I could be sitting for 10 hours and doing work that's worth probably 2 hours in my fully focused mode. So whenever you're sitting to study, make sure you're in a good headspace so you can finish your work in a shorter span of time. And it's really not about how many hours, it's about how much you're doing and how much time you're sitting to study.
Exactly. So just to add, so when we used to do Manthan, for example, Manthan can be very intensive because it's a lot of information.
Sure.
So if you do it with full focus, if you're sitting with someone, you can finish a Manthan in 2 hours. But what used to happen to me in like October, November, Manthan used to take hours and hours because you just can't get through it. So I think just increasing focus.
So Manthan, even like it used to take up my whole day, and then Anushka and I started doing it together. We in the last 3 months, Anushka and I like analyzed mocks, and we had another friend with us, and the three of us used to analyze mocks and do Manthan and everything together.
Okay. So tell me, how many of you sacrificed something in the last 6 months? How many of you went off social media? How many of you said, look, I'm probably falling a victim to this, so this is going to kill me? Anyone? So what kind of sacrifices were made when you had to do 12 hours a day? Something had to be sacrificed, right?
Well, I was never doing 12 hours a day, but at the end, like the last how many ever months, the only sacrifice I made is like not like I wouldn't go out. Like if my parents were going out for dinner or something, like I wouldn't go out, and that's about it. I met my friends still. I still watched all the Netflix I wanted to. Like I still did whatever I wanted, but yeah.
Okay. Pranav, any sacrifices from your side?
Yeah, a lot, I think. In the last couple of months, I think after December 2020 and from Jan to June onwards, I cut down on my social time. Right from social media to going out with my friends. I cut down on almost 3/4 of that, and I spent a lot of time home. But then I focus it towards my efforts over here, and yeah, amongst other things, I didn't work during that time, and yeah, so that's pretty much of it. So I did sacrifice on those things.
Okay. So one of the things that, yeah.
I did have social media on my phone, but then I didn't use it. So one very weird technique that I used was I created a folder in my phone named Waste of Time, and I put Instagram and other social media apps into that folder. So whenever I used to click on that, I used to read the name of the folder, Waste of Time, and then that would induce some sort of guilt, and I would go back to doing something productive.
Wow, that's inspirational.
Adding on to that, I think most phones have this feature called focus mode or something where you like put a timer, and you can't switch it off till the timer's over. So I used to put that timer on when I'm feeling very distracted, so that I sit and study. And you don't want to put it off because it'll make you feel guilty. So the guilt works. And
Go on.
It's on your own willpower. It's not. I could delete social media and still waste time, but have it on my phone and not waste time. It's on your own willpower, very honest.
Okay. Two things. This is for the audience, guys. That I would like all of you to understand here is one common thing that came out in the last 10 minutes. Most of them did nothing much in 11th. It's not to suggest that you can get away with it. If you are in 11th, please don't waste your time, right? Because you need to also understand that all these guys, or most of them, were at about 90, 95, 100 by the time they started taking their mocks pretty seriously. And some of you may not be starting at that point. Some of you may start at 45, 50. And I think you've got the next, if you're in 11th, you've got the next 1 year to work your way to that 90, 95. Because I think it's very important to taste the blood, right? To get that extra motivation, you need to be up there. You need to be right up there, doing well, because that will probably motivate you more. So don't take your 11th too lightly. Try to make the most of it. that obviously will make the pressure on the 12th that much less. Okay, so let's go to the next area. And now we are going to get into something that role of your parents, right? I'm sure in some way, each one of your parents would have played a role either actively or passively in the prep. Okay, so anyone wants to talk about that? How many of your parents played a role in your GK, for example, in helping you with GK stuff? Anyone? Yeah, Nia, would you like to share how that thing worked out?
So my dad is very active with politics and with news. He's always updated, and we keep having a lot of arguments, and it gets pretty heated a lot of time. But at the same time, I find out a lot of things from him. So yeah, for sure, it did help me with my GK to a very large extent.
But did you actively tell him to ask questions or something like that from a Manthan or anyone did that? No. So you guys were pretty much doing it on your own, or you're doing in a group, right? Like Nia made a group with Anushka, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened in that group? Because this is a phenomena I'm seeing increasingly in almost every city. If you look at a lot of the achievers this year, you could find at least about 10 of them working in groups, and invariably the entire group has done well. So that's an increasingly strong phenomena coming out this year. So
I think that was also because most of our classes were online. So we needed that social contact with people who were going through the same things as us.
So how did it work? If Anushka and Nia could throw light on how did that
so basically, after the LSAT, Anushka reached out to me saying, hey, like, I found out that you scored this much, and then let's talk about our CLAT prep. And then we got on call and we immediately bonded.
Like, we hit it off. Yeah. I think in the first call, it's the
first time we spoke to each other. And then we're like, you know what, let's start doing GK together, because GK takes
I think the first thing we did was a mock.
Yeah, I think we
analyzed a mock first. And then we realized that GK isn't working out.
At that time, there were these 2 or 3 mocks that were really, really tough. Like that was I think around the time when we started talking.
Mock 48 and 50, yeah.
Mock 48 and 50. And that was when our scores had slumped like anything. We went from getting a consistent 115, 116 to getting a 90. So we were very shocked, and we were like, what is happening? And at the same time, a lot of people don't relate to what you're going through. So to be able to talk to someone who's going through the same thing as you is very comforting, and it refreshes you and makes you feel like you're not alone when you're going through this process. So we started analyzing mocks together, and then we did a lot of other things and studied together.
I think it also gives you the motivation, right? Because someone's either doing better than you in one mock, and then the next mock, the scores are reversing. So it's a constant challenge that also keeps you wanting to study.
Right. Somebody wanted to say something, right? Yeah, Nia.
I'd really suggest analyzing mocks with your peers. Reason being, when you're getting something wrong, or and the other person's getting something right, or you're getting something right and the other person's getting something wrong, you explain to that other person why you think your answer is right and why theirs is wrong. And when you're doing that, you're strengthening your own base. You're realizing why you've marked that answer and why you've got it right. So you will consistently get that kind of a question right. And the same thing for question that you've got wrong. You will realize your mistakes when you're discussing it with someone. You'll realize what their thought process was and mold your thought process according to that and get a better accuracy.
Yeah.
Anyone else had a partner? Could be your brother or maybe a friend or whoever it was who helped you.
So even I had people from my own class, from my career launcher Dadar branch. So there was Karan and Keshav. So we three, studied together for LSAT as well as for CLAT and IELTS, MHCT. So we discussed all the mocks together sometimes, on weekends probably. Over the week, we used to solve the mocks. And on the weekend, we used to just sit together on a Zoom call and discuss them together. And we used to go through the entire paper, all sections together, and analyze where we're going wrong and help each other out.
Okay. Anyone else?
I too had a group. We had formed in the last 2 months. We used to sit and discuss GK over Google Meet. And as Anushka and Nia said, it was not only about discussing GK, but it was, realizing the fact that there are others who are in the same boat as you, and that motivates you and brings you out from the demotivation that you've been facing.
Sure.
That was-
So there's a question that has come from Ria. How much time did you take to analyze the mock with your peers?
I think about 2 hours, 2 to 3
Yes.
hours sometimes. Yeah.
Mock analysis actually is more time consuming than the mock because you're reading the paragraph again,
Yeah.
you're discussing it. But yes.
And your own opinion is constantly being challenged, even if your answer is right.
Right.
So you really have to think about why you marked
That's what
it.
I felt. Why, it strengthens your basics because you have to prove your point. I know why this is right and this is why it's right.
So you used to question. So you used to discuss the questions which one got right and the other got it wrong, or even the questions which both got right. Were you discussing even those questions?
So there were times when we were confused about 2 answer choices and we both got it right, but we still discussed it because why did we both choose that particular one?
Okay. Good.
That's something. That's something I want to add. Like even like mostly people who, when you would analyze your mocks, you would look at what you've done wrong. But I think you should also look at what you've done right, because you might have just taken a guess and you don't know why it's right. So you should look at all the questions. I know that takes a lot of time and it's annoying, but it's worth it.
Okay. So any other wants to talk about the role of parents? I mean, they may not be actively involved in it, but what's the kind of support you got from them, especially when probably you're down? Anyone would like to talk about that, or any other support that you got in this entire journey?
Yeah, so my parents were very supportive of what I was going through. So when mock scores were falling, when they were rising, it's just an exam. You don't have to get completely distraught over a low mock score. So I think just that stability that they keep giving you makes you feel that yes, you can focus on it without getting very stressed about it, which will just make your scores fall further.
Okay.
Exactly what Anushka said. Even you get very disturbed when you're consistently scoring well, and then there's this one mock where you haven't scored well. So you start doubting everything that you've done so far. Like, what did you do? And at that point, it's very important, that your parents are extremely supportive. And my parents they were always like, it's okay, it's just one mock, and it's fine. Maybe you weren't in the best headspace, and it's completely normal to not do well once or twice. And it's that comfort, and the more positive environment that you're in, it's very helpful for you to score better in your next.
Okay.
I had a different experience. My parents are generally very hard on me when it comes to academics, and because like my dad is like, he's done like UPSC and stuff. He was an IPS officer, so he knows what it's like. So it's not even like I can be like, oh, like you don't understand. He understands 10 times more than me. So so they were always very hard on me, but that was also, I think that was motivating for me, because I've always it's like a goal of mine to like do better than my father did, and being like a ranker in UPSC, like I understand that that's not easy. So anytime he would be like, like I know, like you're not doing well, like, and I'll just be like, oh, because it's because of this, because of that. He'd always have a solution to it. So I think that also helps me, and also the added pressure of such a high goal. So, yeah.
Okay.
Throughout 12th, my parents used to ask me my mock scores, and they would tell me, okay, so this mock, it was a low score, and that would, and more than that, they used to look at my individual sectional scores also, and they would say, last time you did well in legal, why is it not that good now? So then I would get a chance to introspect, because I had to explain it to them too, and that really helped me. Also, when I used to get demotivated, they used to push me to work hard.
Okay.
Just one more thing. So my situation was quite similar to Samriddhi, as she said. So my dad, he's from IIM Ahmedabad, and so he was used to this entire pressure, the entire journey which he had for CAT, what I had for CLAT, and it was on the same lines. So he sat with me after every mock, just for like half an hour or 20 minutes or so. He just talk to me about where I'm going wrong, what's my plan ahead, not the specifics about the paper or the sums or the question, just my overall attitude towards the paper, my future plan ahead, where am I going wrong, how many hours am I giving every day, my other distractions, what's happening with me. That part of it was something which helped me with. He sat with me for hours some day just to talk about it, and he got me through it. And I think it's a really big help from him which I got.
Okay. So now let's go to the area which I'm sure most people who have joined in today would want to hear from you. The emperor of all the sections, and I'm sure all of you understand what I'm talking about, right? The GK, right? Because this is going to be one area where you really don't know what is enough. And for most of these guys who are writing the CLAT next year, most of the stuff that may come in their exam has not even happened yet. So I would like each one of you to just talk about the kind of sources that you used for your GK. If you could just restrict to that, and the kind of effort you put in the last 6 months in terms of the number of hours for GK, sources and the efforts. If you could just stick to that. Who wants to start in this?
Okay. So my sources were mainly News Canvas, Manthan, and I used to read the Hindu and either one, the Hindu or the Indian Express every day. So these were the only sources, and my main strategy was just to not to refer to too many sources because I wouldn't be able to revise. So I only did this, and as for the hours, I think in the last few months it was probably 4 hours for GK every day.
Okay. Pranav?
So for me, I think, seeing CLAT's pattern about GK, it's about one particular concept and in detail about that concept, right? So I think News Canvas was a big help for that because they have a detailed, analysis of every topic, every concept. So that's quite important. And after that, I worked from CL, Career Launcher, Manthan, and the daily updates were really useful. And over that, I think if I had some topic, something important which I read in the paper or in the general news, I used to research on that topic separately through Google or through other sites, understand the entire topic in detail based on that.
Okay. Samriddhi?
So for GK, I did Manthan, and I would also the type of questions for GK the last year wasn't very straightforward. It was more of the essence of the topic is what they wanted to know. So I also did Pratyogita Darpan and GK today, which are all UPSC sources, but they help me understand what actually the topic is about and not just facts about the topic.
Okay.
So that's the sources.
Nia?
I did Manthan that Career Launcher sent us I think I used to do the weekly Manthans. I did News Canvas very dedicatedly because, like Pranav said, it has a detailed analysis of every event. And more than that, I was pretty much just the 3 of these things. And most of my time in the last 6 months went to GK.
So I did Manthan, the weekly Manthans. I did News Canvas, and for important events like China or the OTT regulations that came out, I did my own research. So I was obviously worried that I wouldn't be able to revise, so I made my own notes for important events, which I could keep going back to. So I think that's what helped.
And Vedika?
My sources were Manthan, News Canvas, and I used to read the Hindu on a daily basis. Plus, for topics I felt that were important or some topics which I thought needed a little more research, I would just go to Google and type the topic, and I used to read articles from the Indian Express or Hindustan Times. Also, yes, I recommend making notes because though they might consume time, when you later want to revise, you can easily do that. If you don't want to write down specific facts or anything, you can just make a list and keep ticking them.
Sure. So when was it last year when you started taking GK really seriously? I mean, I'm sure till one point you would have focused more on the other areas, and then GK becomes important as the closer you go to the exam, it starts becoming even more important, right? So last year, when was it that GK started consuming a big chunk of your time?
I think I started. Yeah,
go ahead.
So I think I started doing GK after the CLAT 2020 ended. So October and I started GK, but it became really, really serious in February when I started realizing that I needed to make my own notes to revise because otherwise it wasn't happening.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I started GK from.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go with Samriddhi first. Vedika, I'll come back to you. Just give me a minute.
I paid a lot of attention to March through July. Like I gave a lot of attention to those months. Like not like that's when I started, but those are the months that I paid attention to.
Okay.
I started in Jan.
Okay. Okay. Vedika?
I started around September and October,
Mhm.
and towards the end, I just revised Jan to July because those were the most important months, and the rest I just read through the topics.
Can I assume most of you started around September? September, October was when it started. It basically starts with the mocks, right? Once you start writing the mocks, you realize that, okay, now I need to do the GK. It's just letting me down. So for how many of you, GK was clearly the problem area by February? Or for how many of you it was a strength? You guys were really doing well in GK. No one, right? For everyone, it had to be the hard way out. The hard grind had to start, right? For GK. Okay, what about the other three areas? Now we're talking about English, legal, and logic.
Listen, sorry, I'm just getting into the conversation because I saw a message as to what is Manthan. Okay, so so that is a our daily आता weekly आता है ना आजकल weekly होता है
Daily भी आता है, weekly भी आता है.
weekly. So weekly compendium that we give out, that is a part of the aspiration zone. News canvas is something that is accessible to kids in Mumbai, and so that is we have got this organization called News Canvas, which create event analysis, and all these students who have said that they have not basically stuck to a few resources and did it well. So that's something. Manthan, yes, is in the aspiration account. Sorry, bye.
Thanks, Ijo. Okay. So now let's come to the other three big areas, right? We'll come to the math part last, but English, reasoning, and legal, and all of them have something very similar, and that is you need to have a good reading speed, right? Because one thing that can kill you here is the time management, the amount of time, and invariably you try to give more time to one area, it takes time from the other, or it affects your accuracy in some way, right? So one, I wanted to understand how many of you had a problem with reading speed. The speed was not good enough. I mean, how many of you were grappling with accuracy and how many of you were grappling with speed? For how many of you, which was a bigger challenge and how did you kind of went about with it? So Nia, if you could.
So when I started off, I barely had any time for math. Like I didn't have time for math, and I struggled to even finish.
Sorry, you didn't have time for?
I didn't have time for math. When I started off with my mocks, I never had time for math because I spent too much time on the legal passages. I used to read every single line, but eventually you realize that in legal, the whole paragraph is not important. There are only the sections and the basic principles that are important. And the more mocks you give, the more easily you will filter out the important information. So, and then also you restrict your time. Like for every section, you have a certain time that you give. And if you cross that time, you know that, okay, you're going wrong somewhere and you're probably not going to have time left for something else. So you need to change your strategy according to that. I did start off slow, but towards the end, then I always had 15 minutes left for math.
Okay. Yeah, Ananya, you could talk about it.
For me, time management was an issue initially. Like I couldn't do math either, and that was pulling down my score, obviously. So what I did was the next few mocks I attempted in different orders so that I could find out which order worked best for me. And once I had that one order, I practiced all the subsequent mocks in the same order, and that helped with the time management.
Exactly what Ananya said. The same thing. I practiced a lot of orders and saw what worked best for me. And then you realize, okay, I want to do it this way.
So I'll come back to this question again with the other four. But how many of you felt that putting math and GK in between these three made a lot of sense? Or for how many of you it was going, all these three going in one go?
So I put GK in the middle. Samiti, go ahead.
Yeah,
Anushka.
So I did it in the order of the paper. I went English, GK, legal, logic, quant. Because for me, if I started with quant, I'd end up taking so much time for quant, I wouldn't get to anything else because I was really slow at math.
Yeah.
So I used to finish the whole paper and then go to quant.
Okay, so how did you go about with your, what was the challenge you were facing? Was it the speed or was it
Mine was
Accuracy.
accuracy. Mine was accuracy.
So
Speed
you were
wasn't a
attempting, I
major
remember
issue.
meeting you a
Yeah.
couple of times and your attempts were pretty high.
Yeah,
But,
so in the
but-
beginning, I was attempting 145 plus, 145-ish when I met you. And
Sure.
then I was clearly losing a lot in negative. So I got it
Sure.
down to around 130 plus, but speed wasn't that big of an issue for me.
Okay. Yeah, Samriddhi.
Yeah. So just I would agree with her. Speed was never an issue for me. But I didn't put it in the middle or anything. I did GK first and maths last. So I did go in like in order. But same like I never knew math. Like I'm not good at math. That's not something I can do. So I never understood it. So I always put at the end because whatever time I have remaining is what goes to math. I never like allotted a time for math because I knew that it's the one where I'm gonna score the least.
Okay. Pranav?
Okay, so for me, the order was legal, logic, GK, maths, and English. That's what I followed in the final paper as well. So the reason behind this was I feel you should be smart with the paper because legal logic are the big chunks of the entire paper, and a lot to read in that as well. Finish these two at the first, and then you go to GK. GK is more about reading the question and answering the question. It's either you know it or you don't. There's no two ways about it.
Sure.
Next is maths. That's simply, calculations, thinking on the spot. And last would be English, coming back to something more reading intensive, and so that your mind gets a break and you get back on track with English as the last section, is what I followed personally. And the thing is, again, in the paper, I feel attempts are really important. You need to plan the entire paper in a very proper manner based on the attempts, negatives, and your accuracy. So you can attempt a lot more questions, but if you have a very bad accuracy, then that would have a huge impact on your negatives. So you can attempt less, have better accuracy, and keep improving your scores based on that. So that's something which I followed.
Okay. Vedika?
Right. So I started with legal, went on to math, did logic, did GK, and then in the end, English. This was not the order I was following initially, and that had reflected in my scores. So then around January, I had a session with Palash sir, and he looked at my scores and he asked me my strategy. And that's when he told me that this might not be working for you. So then he told me to divide the solving part or the GK part and the reading part separately and sandwich GK and math in between. So this was the order I followed for the final paper too.
Vedika, what was the problem you faced 6 months before the CLAT? Was it the speed or was it the accuracy?
It was not speed. I think it was accuracy. Because I would mark a lot of questions very confidently, and in the end, I would find out after seeing my analysis.
Most of you were attempting a lot of questions, but accuracy was a challenge. What could be the one? I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people here who would also be in the same boat next year, right? They're attempting 125 plus questions, but they're getting a score of 65, 70, right? They're getting an accuracy which is way below what it should be. What would be your one quick advice to each one of you in terms of improving the accuracy, especially with these three areas?
I would say reading the questions for each passage first, so you know which areas to focus on while reading the passage. I followed this thoroughly during the exam, and it certainly helped.
Okay, Anushka?
So mine was different. I was very religious about reading the passage first, because if I read the question first, then I'd get confused with what the passage actually was about. So, but for a lot of questions, especially if they were specific, I'd go back to the passage. I had the time that allowed me to do that. So I'd recommend that. That really brings up your accuracy, especially in questions which will ask like, which of the following is not true? So it's very specific.
Exactly. Even for me, mine was also a little different. I also read the paragraph before I read the questions, and sometimes you get very disturbed when you're taking up too much time for a certain paragraph. You realize that I've spent too much time, but it's okay. Like allow yourself to do that because maybe it's a difficult paragraph, and then you can maybe cut down your time on another one. But make sure you're reading the questions very carefully because I've made a lot of silly mistakes without reading the question thoroughly. You don't read the except or you don't read the not, and your accuracy falls a lot because of you answering something that's relevant to the paragraph but not relevant to the question asked.
I would just say to increase accuracy, I feel like you should know how to modify your speed while reading the passage. Like there's some things that you can skim over, and there's some things that you have to pay attention to. If you just if you're like in a hurry and you just skim the entire passage, you're gonna have to come back to it again and again. That's gonna waste way more time than if you just read it properly in the first place. So you have to understand that there are you can tell if when it's irrelevant information, whether you've read the questions or not. You can tell that they're not going to ask that. So you have to know which parts you have to pay more attention to and which parts you can skim. So yeah, that was.
Pranav?
So I think the key here is time management. It's very crucial. Plan your sections really well. So for example, legal would take 40 minutes, 35 minutes, 30 minutes. Logic again take 30 minutes, maths 10 minutes, whatever the time suits you. Plan it based on that and stick to it. Make a schedule, follow it based on that. And that's a really crucial part. Otherwise, your entire paper will go haywire if you change your sections, change your time per section. Time per passage is also very important in English and legal as well. So keep those things in mind. And whenever you practice every mock, time manage it, and you'll be good.
So to be honest, that didn't work for me. So initially, what I used to do was I used to go section by then time them, but that didn't work because there were mocks in which one section would be particularly lengthy. And then if you cross your allotted time limit, you start to panic and then you don't focus as well on the other section. So what I started doing was I used to go with the flow of the mock. If a passage took time, it took time. I'd make sure that in the next section, maybe I'd give a little less time. So I think I also understood that if I was taking time, it's also possible a lot of other people were also taking that time. So it didn't make sense to cost my accuracy at the expense of just going through the mock faster.
Sure. Ananya, if you could want to say something.
I think what Pranav did work for me. I did decide certain time limits for each section. On average, I think about 20 minutes for English and so on worked for each mock. Plus, if I didn't, initially I would mark all the questions, even if I wasn't too sure, and that was obviously pulling down my score. So and subsequently, I decided if I was confused between two options, I would strictly not attempt the question. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's great. I would now want all of you to just talk about very quickly the last section, which is the math section. And this is one area which most CLAT takers, right? I'm not generalizing it, but most CLAT takers find it as a very big pain point. GK and math. And what comes out every year is that these two often become the differentiators. It's not very easy, but this year actually it was not the case, right? Because GK was quite different, math was quite different, and actually the guys who did well in the other three actually did well in the CLAT, right? I think I must have met at least a couple of guys this year who have scored close to 90 with a single-digit score in the GK, and obviously a single digit in the math as well. So how many of you hated math? Anyone here who hated math? And when you started the prep, although you're done well in 10th, it just didn't come naturally. Yeah, so I just want these 4 people who raised their hands to talk about what was the trigger that changed the way you looked at math? When did you start looking at math differently? Because one of the big problems I see every year is that students, when they write the mocks, they don't get time for math. And because they don't get time for math, they hardly get a score there. And instead of putting more efforts, they say it's not worth it. You know, they're just not getting the time. So why should I put a lot of efforts on that? So they don't put enough efforts on math. And they keep on getting those low scores, right? So how did you go about with that mindset, more than the preparation, the mindset, in terms of how math is important? Yeah, Samriddhi, if you could start.
So I also heard of a lot of people leaving math, and I think that's a huge mistake, because no matter, even if you're like the worst person on the planet or at math, you can get like 2 or 3 marks, and in a competitive exam where there are like 70,000 people appearing, 2 or 3 marks matter a lot. So even if, like, trust me, like I know it feels like, oh my god, so much effort for 2-3 marks, but it is really worth it. Like, you really have to put in that, because it makes a difference. It does make a difference.
Sure.
And like also, now that it's only a data interpretation, a lot of the concept-based stuff has gone out. So you only have to basically just 4 things that you have to practice, which is your basic like addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. So you just have to learn tricks and like just become as fast as you can at that, and that's about it. And also the order, like I always like looked at all the questions first, like all the sets first, and saw which ones seem easier. Like a bar graph was always easier than like say a pie chart. So like you can like do that and then choose the order of the questions also like in the section. So then you can score the highest if you don't have time.
Yeah. There's a question which wants everyone to mention your scores in the final scores in the CLAT, but I will come to that later. Can we just quickly finish this question and then we'll come to that?
Just to add to what Samriti said, so I was initially very skeptical about math. So even though I was scoring well in mocks, the thing is there will always be one caselet in some mock which will completely throw you off. But it's important to keep that time for math regardless, because for example in the 2021 paper, the math was extremely easy.
Yeah.
It was very easy to score a 10 plus in math. So all you had to do was leave that time in the end for math. So don't give up on it.
I realized that very late, to be honest. I like I said, I started off with no time for math because I had to give all my time to my other sections. But as far as my attitude, I realized that math is kind of your make or break score. It's a direct 10 marks. If you have even 10 minutes left for math and you're open to solving it and you're not completely giving up, it's the last 10-15 minutes. If you can give that to math, then you add 10 marks directly, which you know for sure you're going to get right. And like what Samriddhi said, you can choose which questions to attempt, because sometimes the bar graphs are really easy. You don't even need to solve, the questions. You can just look at the graph and make and mark an answer choice. So when you're doing the math section, see what questions appeal to you and suit your skill set, and attempt those before you attempt the difficult.
Okay. Yeah, Vedika.
The key for me was practice. As you mentioned, some students face this fear of math. Around November, I also started wondering if I'm putting in so much time but getting only 4 to 5 marks, then it's better that I devote time to other sections and gain more marks. But that eventually I realized that would not get my overall score up. And I learned the basic concepts and started practicing relentlessly. Even if you gained a jump of 2 to 3 marks in math, it would affect your overall score.
Okay, Jijo, I'm done with my questions from my end.
So I have a few questions.
Yeah.
I know that you guys have already answered a lot of questions. I want to ask some time pass questions. Okay. Did you slog for the? How many of you truly believe that this was not something that I was born with? I earned it by pure slogging, and I put in effort. And how many would raise their hand for that? Okay. So
not from the beginning for sure.
Huh?
No,
not from the beginning for sure.
End.
Towards the end, only the end.
But Jijo,
only the last month and a half.
I have seen Achievers meet for the last 7 years, 8 years. If I were to look at the average time spent by Achievers every year, I think this would be one of the group which has slogged the most.
I think one of the things that people assume that people make it to these college because of some. I think most of the people make it do well. So I have another question, which is about your reading habits. How many of you say that? What's your reading habit? Let's start with. I'm guessing it. I don't know what it is. Let's start with anyone. So Anushka.
So I did read a lot. I was a voracious reader right from the start, and that did help me in the CLAT to a great extent. So I didn't have to work on reading speed when I actually started giving mocks, and that really boosted my score.
Ananya?
Same. I've always been a reader, and I think vocabulary was something that reading helps in a lot, and reading speed too. Yeah, I read a lot.
Nia?
I used to read. I've grown up reading a lot. I didn't have a lot of time in the last 2 years to read as much as I used to, but I still kept myself updated.
But when you had all these CLAT mocks to read, no? So I think that
and then you don't feel like reading anything after you've given those mocks. But I used to like, I'm somebody who randomly reads articles like on Google. I'll just open anything and read anything. I read just generally. So yeah, it did help. Speed wise and also like Ananya said, vocabulary wise for sure.
And confidence wise.
Pranav.
Again, same for me. Reading was a habit since childhood again, and I love it. Whatever you read may be different. The genre may be different. It can be fiction, non-fiction, about science, whatever. But the reading about it and daily, maybe weekly, monthly, that's what counts. And yeah, just enjoy the whatever you're reading. Just enjoy it. That's what matters.
Samriddhi, yours?
There's nothing I hate more than reading and math. Honestly, I never read. The last book I read was probably that Geronimo Stilton, which is about like a mouse or something. Like I don't read. It's not. I just can't. The only way I guess my speed improves with more and practice. I can't read.
You can't read. You're going to be a lawyer. So this is.
No, but I'll be interested in whatever I'm reading. Then it's fine. I'll deal with
I
it.
think you're going to the same college. Kiska college? You are going where? You're hitting.
I'm going to Nalsar.
Who else is going to Nalsar? हाँ तो दोनों पढ़ने वाले हैं तो please make this girl to read a lot, okay? तो lawyer बनने वाली है, you have to read. Vedika, what about you?
I've always been an avid reader, and so reading speed wasn't much of a problem with me. I could read and comprehend. It came naturally to me.
This is Samriddhi. I think that's something you read. You do read a lot for your classes, cause 12th standard, 11th standard.
So I was in HSC. I didn't study at all. Leave reading.
Seconded.
I think Samriddhi and I are in the same HSC college.
Are you in NM?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're also from Podar. Like I was in Podar.
We were also in the same school. Yes.
And now you're meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, anyway, you're going to college. No, you three are Nalsar, and we have got two Bangalore, right? That which is raise your hand, Bangalore,
Vedika and Anushka.
And Delhi or I am Indore. Could be Ananya. Okay, so my theory this year is that the habit is that reading helped because everybody sabka GK score went bad.
So to all these 6 wonderful achievers for sparing time, sharing your journey with as I said, the next gen. And so thank you so much. And I wish you again on behalf of the entire CL Mumbai team, I wish you all the very best. I'm sure all of you are going to rock in your own way in all these wonderful institutes that you're going to join now. Some of you already joined, right? So wish you all the best, guys. Do well, keep rocking, and stay in touch with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.